Greetings and welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny, trying to be smart podcast about all things new and classic Trek. Wolf 359 was an inside job. I'm your captain, Myrriah Gossett. With me on the view screen, we have.
And I'm your favorite cave baby, Paul Satachet.
Welcome, Paul. Clyde will be joining us in just a few minutes, running just a few minutes behind here for the live stream. But tonight we are going to be talking about the 8th episode of season 4 of Star Trek Lower Decks, entitled Caves. This is directed by Megan Lloyd and written by Ben Rogers. Just a couple of reminders before we really dig into the episode, though. Paul, where can people find our content and share it with other humans?
Well, I think if you go on your computer and go into Caves, CAVEF. No, we are at Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. All links are at StarTrekPod.co. And if you love our content, and we hope you do, please consider joining our Patreon for just $2 an episode at at patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Indeed. And we are doing a couple of episodes about the Ferengi coming up for our Patreon. So you should definitely check that out. Paul, what were some of the episodes we're going
I
to be
think
chatting about?
I think we're going to first start with Menage a Troy.
Menage a Troy.
And we're doing the Bar Association from Deep Space Nine. So we're going to talk about those two. We're going to talk about Ferengi-esque things, all things, because they're obviously the best, race in all Star Trek, because that's how we judge Star Trek, by the bestness of a race.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
We'll be one of those episodes, everyone.
Gonna be one of those. Also, if you are hanging out with us tonight live on YouTube, you can participate in the chat, talk with each other, ask us questions, give us your opinions. If you want us to pay attention or answer a particular question, what helps us distinguish from the chat of y'all just hanging out and chatting with each other is if you type the word pod in all caps, so capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod in the chat, and we'll take a look at that. Also, if you have thoughts and opinions that you want to share with us, your quick takes, you can do that by typing capital HF in the chat for when we get to that point. Or if you're a member of our Patreon, you can just leave us a message. So if you are like, oof, guys, the live stream, love it. It's a little late at night for me. I need to get my shut eye. I feel you. But you can leave us a message anyway at our messages from the menagerie in our Patreon Slack. So another reason to join us over there on the old Patreon. I think it is time for us to get into some of those spicy takes, and we'll take a look at what was shared with us from our crew over in messages from the menagerie. But first, we got to see a quick little video.
Hot freaks! Hot freaks!
You got to deal with it. You got to deal with some hot freaks. Let's see. We have some messages from the menagerie. Paul, do you want to read the first one?
From Kyung, it's great to see the gang rebond. Tendy's story was the shortest of the 4, but it was my favorite. It adds more background to how they so quickly became friends.
And Karen Chu says, I thought this was fun from start to finish, and it was great seeing our gang back together. This was the most laugh out loud ep for me this season. For some reason, the leg really cracked me up. Love the cave being the exact same in every story. Lots of Voyager reference with the baby and the cave mashed with Enterprise pregnant trip to the doppelgangers of the 4, which we didn't get to hear the whole story of. Overall, this was one of my faves. Let's see if there's anything going on in the chat from Stephen Crippen. We have Hot Frake, the green goo that pulses when it talks, is some serious TOS throwback. Indeed, we are going to talk about that. Paul, what did you think about this episode?
I thought that, I think it was funny from start to finish. I think this was probably the most touching episode.
It was
for me.
nice.
Yeah, it was very nice. But what was really interesting about it is it wasn't from the character perspective, but it's like an inside joke between those of us who have been with Star Trek for so long, like all their life, and you go like, oh, here's something that we do that is pretty stupid.
We love a cave that looks exactly the same every episode.
And so there's something ridiculous about it where you go like, oh, this episode is somewhat like of a love letter to me, like hey, caves, and then all the Star Trek people who have been, who've seen enough Star Trek, are like, right,
Caves.
caves.
We love a budget-friendly cave.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah, I mean, this is taking another kind of quick trip away from the main plot, but I kind of enjoyed this little breath to really see our core four back together. It was enjoyable to have this be sort of a clip show without it being a clip show, because it's all clips we've never seen before.
Mhm.
And I did actually like seeing that every single flash was like a point of everyone succeeding. So I was sad we didn't get like a little moment from Tendi, but I'm glad that she seems to be that heart anchor for me, which I really liked. And we have gotten a few really great Tendi episodes this season. So I'm not like sorely disappointed, but I like that we got to see Mariner really succeed. Boimler kind of lose control, but ultimately find a way to succeed. I thought it was a great little kind of recap of where characters have been and where they are now. So yeah, I agree with
Yeah,
you. It was great.
I think like I guess I've always like been a fan of like coming of age stories,
Mm-hmm.
and so like one of my favorite last lines of an episode of a show is like this episode of the Wonder Years. Now, the Wonder Years is a
I
show,
watched The Wonder Years on Nick
oh,
at Night. Yeah.
but not everyone on this,
Mm-hmm.
might know it. So it's about a bunch of kids growing up together. It's told in
There's a
flashback.
reboot on now.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't watched it, but like anyway, so uh, this episode revolves around two friends. One is the extraordinarily nerdy one, and one is Fred Savage.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, like the nerdy one, his name is Paul, no relation. Uh, he,
Could you
uh,
imagine if we were related to everyone who shares the same first name?
yeah, that'd be yeah. Anyway, like he gets drafted for the basketball team,
Mm-hmm.
and Kevin goes throughout the episode trying to, prove to Paul that he ain't all that. But like for it all, at the end, Kevin comes to realize that like Paul can be good at you know things that he isn't good at, and like
Mm-hmm.
and it ends with sometimes uh you have to grow apart to grow together.
Oh, that
Isn't
is
that
so
sweet?
nice.
Isn't that sweet?
I did like that is nice. And I
Yeah,
think it's true. Like you have to kind of go and I like that this episode did that. It's like you kind of have to go and work on your own to figure out who you are as an individual
sure. Yeah,
in
yeah,
order to grow within your friendships with other people.
yeah. So that's what I felt. It was very heartwarming that way.
Yeah. I wanted to go through. I put in our notes here. I have a couple of my favorite cave episodes, but I'd love to hear
Hmm.
yours. And I tried to pick some that kind of are relevant to the episode.
Hmm.
So we have. I feel like a direct tie to The Devil in the Dark, which is a original series episode, which also has sentient goo, and it's our first cave episode of the Star Trek
Hmm.
universe. Another one of my faves is Heart of Stone from Deep Space Nine,
Yeah, yeah.
which is a heartbreaking one, but really great.
Heartbreaking. Why is it heartbreaking?
Well, it felt heartbreaking in the moment. It's like eventually it's like it ends well, but it's very tense, you know?
Yeah, sure. Because Odo like goes, "I love you, I love you, Kira."
Vulnerable. It's vulnerable. Maybe that's like the better
There,
word for
there
it.
you go.
And then the one that I cannot believe, it was like such a deep cut that I hadn't remembered this episode. I had to really dig around because I was like, I have this vague memory. And it's Paratrucian from Voyager,
Hmm.
which is when Neelix and Tom Paris have to take care of an alien baby together.
I don't remember that episode.
It's when they're arguing about Kess
Yeah.
and they have to go on a mission together
Hmm.
and like it's some ion storm
Sure.
something the thing, and alien baby is in there and they can't get it to eat, and then they figure out that the proteins from the ion storm are what the baby
Oh,
needs to eat.
hence the I got it. I didn't realize that. Okay,
I
yeah,
know,
no,
I was
deep,
like,
deep,
dang,
deep cut.
deep cut.
Clyde.
Clyde has made it.
Hello, everyone.
How you doing this evening, Clyde?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, so Myrriah and I were saying how like this cave episode was particularly offensive compared to all the other cave episodes that we've seen before. So do you want to comment on that?
I mean, there's nothing like a cave to offend me. So
Mm.
I think cave is just code. No, my favorite moment in this episode was clearly the joke around how the tricorders and the sensors and the communications never works in a cave. That was hilarious because it was so true. And that was, to me, quintessential Lower Decks, where they're talking about something that we've all sort of taken for granted, but also go, why is that?
Mm-hmm. I loved the
Like,
Mariner line when she says something like, "Oh, nothing like a pile of rocks to interfere with the best technology ever created, the most advanced technology ever created."
yeah.
Very funny. I was just sharing with Paul some of my favorite cave episodes. Do you have a particular favorite cave episode of Star Trek?
I don't know. I mean, I think
If you don't remember the title, it's fine.
I wasn't the one with Darmok. Wasn't he in a cave at one point?
No.
No.
Yeah, maybe no. They were a campfire.
Mm.
There was that episode where Geordi was with that Romulan on that ion planet,
Oh yeah.
and I don't particularly like that episode, but I because like nothing really happens except for like yelling at each other in a cave.
Mhm.
But but it just shows you like, oh look, we don't have to do it. We just need to put them in a cave, and that's it.
I mean, didn't they go back in time and find Data's head in a cave?
Oh yeah, Time Zero, 1 and
Time
2.
Zero. I feel like there's an episode of Deep Space Nine, or no, of Voyager with B'Elanna in a cave of some sort.
I don't remember B'Elanna in a cave. Wait,
mm.
no, yeah, that's the one where she gets split in two between her Klingon self and
Oh, yeah.
because we know we should get that people love that type of that holds up so well.
So well.
Yeah.
So well.
It's kind of wild how ubiquitous the cave
Yeah,
is. Like, do you think when they start writers' rooms, like back then, they were like, okay, so we know we're going to use the cave set at least 3 times this season. So where do we, for budget reasons? So how do we want to use it?
I mean, it's always one of those things. Like I'm big into art. I love sports.
Blood
but
fever.
There's
yes, blood fever.
But there's always this business aspect of it, right?
Mhm.
Like you've always got to think about the business aspect. And I do wonder if they look around, especially back in the 90s and the
Mhm.
early 2000s, they go, okay. And people come up. If you imagine a writer's room and people are coming up with these great ideas, and they're like, oh, and they've got this planet that we've never been to. And eventually somebody goes, hey, wait, time out.
But what if it's in a cave?
Yeah, or because to me it's like focus in on a couple things that we know we can do. We do caves really well, and we do desert planets, right?
Yeah.
But I have an idea for a water planet. Man, water planets. Have you seen many water planet episodes? No, too expensive. Cave, desert. Because I feel like we get a lot of those, right?
It's like cave, desert, and then can we use the Old West set that's sharing the Paramount lot?
Well, I mean, I my wife and I, we wrote for a TV show. We pitched a TV show called Creep Show, and like one of the reasons why we think our episode was picked was because it was the cheapest to shoot. And so I imagine if I were in that room, I go like, okay, here are these episodes, like lots of special effects, a bunch of Borg, blah blah blah. We don't got a lot of money. Well, I guess we're gonna have to have a couple of cave episodes.
Well, and Myrriah, to your point, like the old West set or the old casino sets, like, hey, you remember we got a bunch of Tommy guns laying around, so we could reuse those too.
And I love that in the pacing of Lower Decks, even though it is an animated series, the fact that they're putting it before their grand 2-part finale, essentially, like the final 2 episodes, it's kind of a hilarious homage to the original, like to the 90s, the pacing of the 90s, where you'd be like, ooh, I know we have some really high budget episodes coming up, so what can we do all in one location?
and it also had a little bit like of this flashback episodes. Like I hate the episodes where the entire episodes is flashback, but this was kind of like we're gonna do a bunch of episodes, and now you've got this monster that's saying, wait, no, you can't go, not until I hear another story. Like, give me more stories. it did have a very tongue-in-cheek, like, we're gonna have a good time making fun of all the things that were just perfectly, tried and true methodologies of the old Trek series.
I
Mhm.
suppose like this is what I really, really appreciate about Lower Decks is that unlike all the other Star Trek properties, they all live in their narrative, but like Lower Decks lives in its narrative and lives in the meta, and so in a way, like Lower Decks is a friend to the viewer,
Mhm.
and I really appreciate that, like that that duality of going, oh, they have their own thing, but it's also like here, this is for you specifically, nerds.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, Paul, it felt like a love letter to the people who really get it. And it
Yeah,
was like, even, and it's like, even if you are a new fan, I appreciated that they then really did it in an over the top way to be like, oh, even all of our lower deckers have a
sure,
cave story.
sure,
So
sure.
it's like, even if you're new, you can then, like, if you rewatch this after watching it for the first time, you're like, oh, haha, like all of these cave adventures that they have. This is so wild and crazy.
Well, and Tindy's story about being trapped in a turbo lift was
Mhm.
like, it was almost like, look, we don't have time or the episodes to do an homage to all the time someone gets stuck in a turbo lift, but it was kind of like you could do a whole show about getting stuck in a turbo lift not working, having to crawl through a Jeffries tube. It was like there's a whole bunch of things that you're like, wow, this happens over and over and over
Mhm.
again. You would think that somebody would be like, hey, you know what we should do? We should put the turbo lift on a whole separate generation system, right? So that if we lose power, it doesn't go out. Because people get stuck in these things all the time.
Yeah, and I mean, we did see that in the short trek with Spock in number one, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you remember that particular episode where they're stuck in the turbo lift, which I enjoy the idea that the turbo lifts are where people go to confess like their secrets and their feelings. Because
Like,
Tendy's like, oh, I was so worried. And they're like, oh, we just see you for who you are. We're not going to put stereotypes on you, which I thought was also so nice.
It's the turbo lift is like the old like MTV confessional, right?
sure, sure.
Where you
Like,
just step in and it's like,
so
here's what really happened.
have you guys ever been stuck in an elevator?
No, knock
No.
on wood.
Like I nor have I, but like it seems like in my lifetime I've been in a couple of elevators, but like but I feel like on shows like those turbulents are just not as well built. Just,
I mean, what was I just? I just finished watching the new season of Sex Education on Netflix, which I really enjoy that show. And there's a whole like subplot about an elevator that keeps breaking on that
sure.
show as well. Um, but I do wonder. I mean, I don't want it to happen. I will say I was just in like the United Kingdom, and those elevators in Europe and the UK are very tiny and they rattle a lot. And I was convinced I was going to get stuck in one at some point.
Sometimes it's worth just taking the stairs, man. Like
Yeah.
I think you walk to an elevator, you look at it, and you make a judgment call, and you say, 3 flights, I'll walk. 11
Yeah.
flights, risk it.
I'll risk my life is worth that. I'll take I'll roll those dice.
Roll the dice. I did want to. I guess we can dig into each particular flashback. We saw Boimler hanging out with Levy, who is a repeat character. We've had them on Lower Decks a few times, who is our resident conspiracy theorist, which I thought was really funny to kind of roundabout way have the Vendorians be like really into the conspiracy theories about
Sure.
them, and they like really enjoyed that play. I also started rewatching, but I didn't get to finish. It was the Vendorian episode of the animated series. I don't know if y'all have watched that one before. It's the Survivor, the Scavenger. It's something like that. But essentially, it's like they come upon this like it's supposed to be this person who has been like missing for a while, but it ends up being a Vendorian who's then like shape-shifting to different members of the crew. And it's like a very funny, like little shape-shifty like animation that they do.
Yeah, I think in episode 2 of Lower Decks, a Vendorian was there. Like,
Yes, in the envoys in season 1. Mhm.
so yeah, so sure, octopus
Yeah.
people.
I mean, it makes sense to do it in the animated shows because that would be a harder one to make happen
Sure.
in our live action series. But what did you think of Boimler's kind of explosion of frustration with Levy?
You know, do you ever have you ever had a friend who you go, or a person you work with that you go like, oh, you're the problem?
Mm,
Like, like
mm,
and I feel like I feel like I, more than anything, in any episode in all of Lower Decks, I go like, I empathize with you, Boimler. Especially after
blowing up
the
the little car.
yeah, I go like, you're being stupid, and now it's impacting me.
Hmm.
And like, your tolerance is like really, because in a way it's like a little selfish, right?
Right.
I'm right, and so my conspiracy is right, and but in this case, it was. So I
I
I guess I'm like Boimler. I just got screwed. I got messed up. I got
I'm,
schooled.
I'm with you a little bit, Paul, in the fact that like I think he was being real chill. Like Boimler was trying to like be real chill and accommodating, but you're in a crisis,
Mhm.
right? And when he blew up that car, it was just like, dude, now your psychosis is affecting me, right? Your paranoia is in my world. When it's just you and you're running your mouth and I'm annoyed, I can let you handle that. But you
now my
blew
life,
up.
yeah.
Yeah, my life is on the line. Now I'm losing my cool.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt that
It's basically how Myrriah feels about us all the time. Right?
all the time.
She's like, oh, it's okay. I'm gonna let you guys talk, but
you
like,
guys talk. It's gonna
don't
be
blow up that
just
car, or I'm gonna piss.
fine. I still have control of all the buttons. Chupi says there's a great line from Boimler, and that is, your knowledge is artfully mixed with hyperbole and misinformation.
Wasn't that the
Oh, that was the
But both in
Vendorian.
Boimler.
yes?
Mhm. Which I really enjoyed. And then we get to I
Wait,
think
he like Levy was eating that like big
Cricket.
fly or what
it was a
cricket or what it
cricket.
was.
Mhm.
Like he was just into it. I was like, dude, calm that
Have
down.
you had anything made with cricket flour before?
No,
Crunchy crickets. They're pretty
I
good.
thought about it once, but no.
It's pretty good. It's the
Have you ever-
protein powder of the future because
Have you
climate
ever
change.
have you ever had like chicken, Clyde?
Yes, tastes like
Imagine
cricket.
It's just crunchy.
imagine chicken, but like nothing like it.
Yes, I've had some interesting things, but cricket's not hasn't made it yet.
Yeah, I remember I sat in, this is a weird tangent, but I once got to sit in on a taste testing of these like protein granola bars that were made with crickets.
And they suck.
By sit in, did you say you had to watch?
No, I
Or
ate
did
them, but yeah,
You ate them.
Mhm.
Okay.
that was part of like a little, it was like a demonstration of the product. Yeah, it was
Okay.
good.
Taking a note.
No, it wasn't.
I
When
mean,
you
it just
eat at
tasted like
Myrriah's-
peanut butter. It was because
Yeah.
there's like a peanut butter bar,
It's like when you eat at Myrriah's house, ask for the ingredient list. Got it.
Right.
I'm a pretty good cook. I would only willfully with knowledge let you know if you're gonna have crickets.
Appreciate that.
Just Clyde, if I ever cook for you and you're like going, this is good, Paul. What is it? I go, peanut hamper.
I mean, Peanut Hamper's
Dang.
apparently a pretty good gardener, so
Yeah,
there you
she
go.
might have some
vegetables might be on point.
There you
tasty tomato salads.
Mhm.
I think for me, my favorite one was the Rutherford and Ta'ana
go.
cave.
I knew that you would say that. That'd be my guess.
It was just so beautifully absurd in all the best ways. Like it just, and I was talking to Paul before you got on about this episode of Voyager where Neelix and Tom Paris have to raise a cave baby that they find in an episode. And that is also like a weirdly beautiful, strange episode.
There is so much wrong in that description of an episode.
Yeah.
that if you sit and there's this episode where Neelix and Tom Paris raise a cave baby, my next question would be, and the show got renewed?
Yeah.
Like,
They find a nest of eggs and one of them hatches.
It's really weird because, like, like if you think of, like, to me, like, season 1 of Next Generation was fine. It has some embarrassing episodes, but
yes, it did.
it's fine. Like, I could see how it could be renewed, and, like, and same with Deep Space Nine. But Voyager, I go, like, the first season of Voyager, I'm like, oh,
I
you
don't think
made it,
that's
huh?
from the first season of Voyager.
I understand, but
it?
Voyager's like, it's oh.
Okay,
It's
so
from
speaking
season
of
2. It's season 2. There's
Like,
plenty of episodes for you to
like
forget about.
all
if you've
everything
seen.
pre 7 of 9 is sus in Voyager.
so speaking of questionable episodes, as you guys might know, Mike Moody Garcia and I
Mhm.
do a we're just starting a Stargate SG1 kind of podcast, the essential episode. So we got into this conversation about kind of what the first season of Stargate, and there's some rough episodes in there.
Yeah,
And
no.
specifically like the fourth episode or something like that it's a terrible episode. Like, it's just like, oh my goodness, like it's so cringeworthy. And I was
Ooh.
like, I was
What's it
telling
about? Because I've seen all of them.
it's about it's basically it's about a betrothal, and like Samantha Carter has to wear this big dress and she's being sold to these men. Like, it's a hot mess. I think it's called Emancipation. Like, I'm gonna be honest. I'm getting out there. It's terrible. And so I'm thinking, I'm trying to explain to Mike because he hasn't watched it, and I'm like, it's good. Like, we can skip right over. It doesn't matter. And I'm thinking, it reminds me of this first season Next Generation episode that is so horrible we never go back and watch it. Right? You know what I'm talking about?
Of course I know.
Okay.
Tashiara's finest moment.
Yeah. Here's the thing about it. They're written by the same person.
Oh!
That's incredible.
Oh, I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
That's
I love
incredibly awful. Incredible.
So awful.
I
was
love
like,
it.
man, are you kidding? Because we're doing an episode, and I was like, I'm doing the research, looking at the writers, and I was like, no, they wrote that episode. And so I click, and I'm like, they wrote that episode too. No.
Oh, that is a tidbit there. Oh my god, I love that.
That makes sense now.
I just saw a TikTok that was like, it was like when sci-fi and fantasy writers go, okay, here's the pitch. What if we take all of the awful things that have happened to Black people and Indigenous people and we make them happen to white people? And they're like, and it's a book.
Yes. No. Please stop.
Just stop, Beyond. That's bananas. Back to this episode of Vortex. Carmen reminds us that Trip, there's a correction below, but Trip from Enterprise has a pregnancy through touching.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember that episode.
I couldn't remember. Like, I knew that had happened before, but I could not place where it is. And
yeah, no,
it's Enterprise. That makes sense. Thanks, Carmen.
Yeah. But I thought it was like, it's like funny that they're like, I love Tahana just like quickly explaining, like doing the Star Trek techno babble to be like, oh yeah, this is what's happening to you right now. Which I thought was just go with it.
Just go with it.
And when Rutherford comes to, it's like, oh, that wasn't just some PTSD dream. But then I really liked their weird little bond. I do have a question of like, I guess that alien clone baby went back because the planet that they're on where they're harvesting the
moss.
The moss from is the planet where that particular species is from. So I guess she just like, I hope she would just went back and lived with like other members of her family.
Yeah.
But I was like, what a wild way to be able to just be like, oh, I don't want to die. Here you go. I'm going to reclone myself. And I'm like, I had so many other questions. I was like, are you like a Trill in that you then remember everything from your past life? Or is it just like the concept of your life continues on? I was like, I want to know everything about this planet and this species and these like cave creatures that they coexist with.
There's a whole sense of consent before you do that I was like, hey, you're not gonna ask, you're just gonna be like, You're pregnant. Come on.
That was that was a little concerning. You could
I
be
know,
like,
like-
hey, can I transfer my consciousness into your stomach?
I mean, as an adolescent who was so scared of accidentally getting someone pregnant, though there weren't a lot of opportunities, so I don't know why that was
Too much-
such
La 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 la
an
la
obsession.
la la la
Um,
la la la. This
the the idea of someone just being able to do it that simple would have absolutely terrified me.
Yeah, it was scary, but it was so weird and strange, and I loved the sequence of events, and I love Dr. Tahana because she's just so bananas. And then we moved
Oh
to
wait. Kev says
Mhm.
like Catherine Powers, the writer of like.
I mean, I wasn't gonna name her.
Uh, but-
Try not to name her name.
but-
I knew it.
but he
did
makes-
introduce Garrick. I mean, that's a
Garrick-
big
Okay,
plus.
Garrick
It's a
is
big
amazing.
plus.
Garrick is
So-
amazing. Like this is like he's amazing. So
Listen, and just in case for some reason Catherine Powers has nothing else to do and she's listening to this podcast, and it's like, why am I catching stray bullets? Like,
Listen,
on a-
we
on a
all have
Thursday night.
opportunities to make
Clyde is
mistakes
just
and to
popping
learn and
caps.
grow.
listen,
I'm just saying, there's
I
always
wanna say
opportunities to learn and
I
grow.
want to say this: if you look at her catalog, to Kern's point,
Uh-huh.
she actually has a bunch of really good episodes. And I look at this and go, you know what? Every once in a while, we have an off night. Like, if you've listened to this pod, we have a couple pods that we just don't talk about.
hey,
Right?
I'm right
'Cause it's
here,
like-
man. That's not cool. Not cool, Clyde. That's not cool.
I know. I'm just saying, like, I think there was a night where Paul, it was just Myrriah, you were out, and it was maybe just Paul and I'm like, we got
Right.
through it. I don't know
We
that
got-
I would recommend us do that again, but we
Like-
got
like-
through it.
It's a red alert night.
Yeah. And so I look and go, she got a couple episodes in her bag that, didn't age well. I mean, the thing that's surprising to me is that she went back to the same theme twice.
Like
It's like, ooh, okay. At least we didn't get I mean, knock on whatever. Maybe there's not a third time's the charm for not learning the lesson. I don't know. But
Well, I mean, I believe Code of Honor was embarrassing even in the time.
yes.
I like the real talk, right? Like like you go like, oh, okay, huh? Like because I was in high school at that point, and I was like, huh, that's okay. I guess that's okay. It's on TV.
I guess that's okay. It's on TV. Oh my God.
It just seems a
No.
little weird,
Paul, to your point, I think there was a time that we were a lot less critical
Sure.
about television. And so you kind of was like, oh, someone somewhere approved this, so it's okay.
Like, yeah. I mean, I remember the two episodes I remember most in season 1 of Next Gen is that episode, because for all of it, you don't go to a planet with a lot of black people. I mean, it was I'll just say that's the case. And the shower episode, where they get the drunk water and Data hooks up with Yar, and I'm going like, huh, that's pretty lazy. They just copied seriously, TOS. So anyway, first seasons are rough.
I don't know if you're ready to move on, Myrriah, but I really like Mariner's flashback with
Thank you.
Delta ship.
I agree. That's probably my favorite too.
That
Yeah.
the time dilation and getting old and the competition, and then I think somebody in the chat said it earlier. The broken bone was
God.
funny. I didn't want to laugh. I was like,
So,
I should be appalled.
oh my God, it's not healing right.
Yeah, no.
I was like, oh, this is why, what did I just, someone asked, I think anyway, it was someone asked a comedian, what's the funniest movie you've ever seen? And they were like, I hate to say this, but honestly, on first watch, the movie that has made me laugh the most is Jackass. And I was like, and this
Jackass
is why.
is solid.
This
Jackass is a solid movie.
But this is
I-
why it's just like down to like the common denominator of of human pain that is funny enough because you know they're okay on the other side of it.
Yes.
yeah, no, like it's always fun, like to laugh at human suffering. Yeah, I mean,
I'm
like, like that's not. Don't take that out of context. Come on, guys. But
I'm,
like,
I'm with Chufi when the leg fell off, man. Oh my goodness! I had to pause it. I'm gonna be honest. I had to pause it because I was laughing too hard. It was the pain, the suffering, Paul, the whole like.
no,
It's
no,
just
no.
the bone sticking out, but when it fell off, it was just like, oh my
Like,
goodness!
I
And they
like
were
how
like, "It'll be okay. Just walk it off."
I like how like like when it was healing, it looked like a gazelle leg. You know.
So strange. I'm like, you didn't be like, let's just reset it a little bit before you go walking through. Like nothing. Just
I my
oh.
only note is the other Delta shifter who was aging backwards. I felt like they could have pushed on that just a little bit more and had him younger. Like
Yeah, I was
I
gonna
thought
say
they could have
Another K baby.
just
just
about
the
like
cave toddler. um yeah, because honestly I didn't catch, like it kind of happened so quickly. I didn't really catch it all the way on first watch, like that part of the joke. So on second watch though, um I definitely was like, oh, this would have been kind of funny to see them all like toddling up there in some way. But what did y'all think of? I felt like, last week there was a lot of, or yeah, last week, because we talked about that episode last week, there was a lot of kind of him and hawing about, Mariner sort of backsliding, but it was nice to see her really like do well and lead in her own way, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know if she did well. She did crash the shuttle. I'm kidding. Like but like
It's like a brick, Paul.
yeah, that's just like a brick. That's right.
it's, hold on. It's funny because across all of sci-fi, when you look at shuttles or spacecraft, it's almost like this one-upmanship of how cool we can make these things, right? Like you think about any of the spacecraft in like
Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica, right? I always think about the Imperial shuttle, Darth Vader's Imperial shuttle in Star Wars. The Enterprise and the Star Trek shuttle is largely shaped like a brick.
It looks like a minivan.
It does look like a minivan.
Yeah.
And with the exception
it's
of like
Honda
the,
Odyssey of like,
Yeah.
like, huh?
It's practical. It's very practical.
That's right.
Can
It
fit
had a
lot,
side
good
door. It had a
storage,
side door. That's right.
very safe airbags.
That's right.
it's so I think that's why it's funny, because it's like no one would disagree with her comment. And so the fact that she crashed it and everybody was largely okay makes it a Honda Odyssey. It really does.
It is the
Sorry,
Honda Odyssey with 4-wheel drive, if you will. I liked the premise of it. I liked seeing Mariner kind of figure her stuff out, and then I liked that we got to see everybody kind of use the skills that they've learned outside of their friend group, help their friend group in the end.
Sure.
And then the cherry on top was like the very sweet connective story that Tendi kind of brought us all together with the heart at the end. I did like the big text of like 2 hours later, 3 hours later. Like every time it popped up, I was like, oh dang, what are they going to be doing now? And I also I read in one, I think it was Trek Movie, had their recap up, and someone pointed out that in the while they're stuck in the turbo lift, there is that moment when Tendi and Rutherford are playing that kind of charades game, and there's a little bit of like a look at each other between Mariner and Boimler about Tendi and Rutherford, kind of adding a little bit to that will they, won't they?
Exactly. How in sync they were. Because you got that too.
I'm telling you guys, we're gonna look up. It's gonna be like season 6 of this show, season 7. And we're going to find out that they have been hooking up the entire time.
You think?
Maybe.
Or is it going to happen after they ate chocolate versions of each other? And that's what it's like. They're like, oh yeah, well after this whole thing, like we saw each other without clothes on, we decided it was okay.
Yeah,
Like
it was cool. Like,
that would be wild. But um yeah, overall I really enjoyed this episode. Chippy points out Shax, I'm here to rescue you, also very funny. We got a Boimler scream. Can't be an episode without a Boimler scream. I feel like there should be like a bingo card for Lower Decks.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no. Next season 5 we'll do that.
Yeah, we can do a bingo card.
I just were you guys okay with the fact that this did not move the story along at all?
I mean, it reminded me of a true Bottle episode where you're reusing a set, you're like not really moving much plot forward, but I did feel to me like it was moving our character arcs forward, which was enough for me.
Okay.
Like for me, I think, how should I say it in the best way? I didn't care because it felt really in style of what Star Trek is. Like, because Star Trek oftentimes will now have like arc episodes, like, seasonal arcs and real episodics. Whereas like in this iteration of Star Trek, like, at least in Lower Decks, like we had like hints of the long arc with the ship in the beginning and then completely nothing about it. And so rather than do that, they just did like, oh, here's a episode we can put anywhere and it would work. And so I forgave it for that.
Okay.
Because I'm starting to lose faith about the ship, the big mystery. I think it's going to be a letdown.
Mike McMahon keeps hyping it up, and I feel like he's very rarely let me down.
Yeah, like I think I've been happy with all the finales, but like there's this part where I go like, this one more than any of them. Like you really kind of made a promise, like, oh, this is going to be good, and I go like, what did that? Lost. That Lost was Lost, and I didn't watch Lost. I watched the first half of season 1, and I go like, these people don't know what they're doing. and then I watched the last season because everyone's like, oh, we're gonna watch it land, and then when it crashed, I was going like, yep, I saved myself 4.5 seasons.
I mean, Lost was amazing up until the last episode.
Well, I don't know. But did it undo everything? Because for me, like, oh, they're lost.
I think if you largely just ignore the last episodes, it's a great series of television. But I'm trying to think of like, Myrriah, when we went and watched Discovery and we had the whole like, what was it, like the Red Angel or the like, wasn't there some concern that it was this big thing and it was going to be a bit of a letdown?
I mean, we like The Burn, I think, was one that a lot of people didn't enjoy the finale of. It's like, but I think you also take that risk when you're doing bigger puzzle box series, which is what Discovery is, right? Like you are setting up a problem at the beginning of the season and then you have to solve it by the end. Versus like Lower Decks were really just kind of along for the ride and they set up a bit of a seasonal arc. But for me, Lower Decks is about the characters more than it is about like the larger seasonal arc.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, so I'll ride with Mike McMahon and company.
I'm on the ride. I'm just my arms are just a little crossed, and I go like, oh, you're
at like the top of the roller coaster, and you're just like, this better be fun on the way down.
That's right.
I part of me really expected to have something to do with either Badgie or Peanut Hamper.
I feel like those were the like what they wanted us to think all season, and now they're out of the way. We get an actual surprise.
Like Picard season 3, I was kind of disappointed when it's, oh, look, it's the Borg. Oh man, that's so cool, said Paul. In this way that tell me that you're disappointed without telling me you're disappointed.
But yeah, we shall see. I've liked all the finales, and I hope we go in strong because I know that there's a lot of talk about how most streaming shows don't get past a 5th season. So I'm really hoping we get as much storytelling as we can out of these characters because they're really fun.
Yep.
I think that's it for me on this episode. Anything else from y'all?
I just had a thought, like a
Mhm.
random thought. What if like people just did reboots of series that had bad endings? So like instead of rebooting a whole
Mm.
series, just reboot the season.
You
So like
reboot. So like we get a new season of the last season of Game of Thrones.
exactly, exactly. Like I bet you there'd be support for that. I could be
Mm,
wrong. I don't know. Like
interesting.
you don't have to invest in a whole season, uh, and just bring these people back and just redo multiverse cut.
It wouldn't even be called like a reboot. It would just be called a do-over,
That's right.
right?
Yeah, sure.
A do-over season.
A
Yeah.
mulligan, the mulligan season.
Oh yeah,
Mulligan season.
beautiful.
There you go.
I think that'd be a great. Like I think like people are talking about Battlestar Galactica. Like there are a lot of shows out there that.
I think the tough part with some of these shows, right, with like Lost and Battlestar Galactica, is they got so big and the story became so complex. I don't know how you end them, but it feels like for Lost and Battlestar Galactica in particular, it came to a point where you had to end them, and they
Sure.
might have been shows that really just needed to keep going,
I don't
right?
know. I don't know if Lost had any more wheels, any more gas.
I
I
mean,
think Lost was creatively bank. Oh, did I say that? Like ultimately, I was a very big Alias fan,
okay.
and then basically around season 3 or 4, I go like, oh, you don't know what you're doing. You're just making stuff up, and go like, oh, well, look at this box, look at this box, look at this box. They go like, you don't know what you're doing.
I don't know. I'm interested because for me, I think sometimes it's hard for me to stay truly engaged beyond about season 4 or 5 anyway. And usually that's around where they have to do the second reboot of a significant story, right? And so it's like, am I getting emotionally invested in something, right? So it depends on how the first couple reboots went,
Oh,
right?
and like with SG1, you watch all 10 seasons.
I'm gonna be honest, I took a break.
Oh,
Like, 'cause- well, here's the other thing. Listen, I'm a big character person.
sure.
When you start switching up characters, you're
When
gonna
Jack
have me rethinking.
when Jack O'Neill left, you were like, screw this.
It's
I
not so
need my
much screw
MacGyver.
it,
I
but
need
I
my
need to.
MacGyver.
I'm gonna sit and think about it for a little bit. Like, all right, you've got a whole new cast of characters. How do I feel about this? And sometimes
I
it
gave you
takes
one
me.
mulligan with Peter Jackson. Like what's his name? Is
Well, and if I'm being honest, Morena Baccarin, when she showed up, it was kind of like, maybe I should take a second look at this.
Yes. So when we finally get the 12th season of Lower Decks and we've had 5 character changeovers,
I'm gonna be like, I'm out. Yo,
well, no, you're like, oh, Captain
continue on
Boiler,
without me.
like this Captain Boiler ship and like lower decks.
Mhm,
Boom, like
potentially.
I'd be for that.
It
Like,
flops and all of our lower deckers are the B stories of our upper deckers.
and Tendi is the pirate queen that she's always meant to be. Oh, that would you watch that? Would you see how that happened, Clyde? Yeah,
Yes,
you
I
would.
would. Yes, I
Yeah,
would.
you would. So
I mean,
sit back down. Sit back down.
oh man. All right, y'all. We
We're
will
off
be
the rails.
back. We will be back next week to talk about episode 9 of Star Trek Lower Decks. You can subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on Apple and on Spotify. Visit StarTrekPod.co to find links to all of those places, as well as a link to our Patreon, where we are going to be starting our series about Ferengis.
Ferengi.
So you should subscribe and check that out, because that is going to be a Patreon only exclusive. And
Maybe we'll do like a later on like our favorite cave episodes as well.
yeah, I was thinking about that. We could do a couple of cave episodes. That could be really fun.
Yep.
You can find us on X/Twitter, whatever that garbage pile is right now, for updates. Thank you, Karen, for helping us run things over on that trash site. Apparently they're going to make us start paying for things. Then we'll be gone and I'll find out some other place for us to be. We appreciate y'all. Live long and prosper. Bye-bye.
Bye everyone. Oh wait, let me do, there we go.